欢迎来到职场达人英语学习节目，让我们开始学习吧。
Tell me about a time when you had to lead a project without formal authority.
请描述一次你在没有正式权力的情况下需要领导项目的经历。
Tell me about a time when you had to lead a project without formal authority.
请描述一次你在没有正式权力的情况下需要领导项目的经历。展示影响力、说服力和建立共识的能力，强调如何通过专业知识和人际关系获得团队认可。
6 months ago, our company needed to migrate from our legacy CI/CD system to a modern platform, but no official project lead was assigned due to competing priority situation. As a senior developer who had previously researched modern CI/CD solutions, I recognized the urgency of this migration and volunteered to coordinate the effort across 3 development teams without any formal authority task. I first created a comprehensive analysis comparing our current challenges with potential benefits of the new system, using concrete metrics to build a compelling case. To gain buy-in, I held individual conversations with key stakeholders to understand their specific concerns before presenting in group settings. Rather than dictating the approach, I organized a workshop where representatives from each team could contribute to the migration strategy, creating shared ownership. I developed a prototype to demonstrate workflow improvements and set up lunch and learn sessions to share knowledge. When facing resistance, I focused on understanding underlying concerns rather than pushing my agenda, which helped identify valid implementation risks we needed to address action. Within 3 months, we successfully completed the migration with support from all teams, reducing build times by 70% and deployment failures by 40%. Several engineers who initially resisted became advocates for the new system, and management recognized the initiative by establishing a formal DevOps improvement committee with me as technical advisor. This experience taught me that effective leadership without authority comes from building genuine consensus through expertise, empathy, and creating opportunities for others to contribute meaningfully to important decisions result. Tell me about a time you led a group of people.
请描述一次你领导一群人的经历。
Tell me about a time you led a group of people.
请描述一次你领导一群人的经历。展示凝聚团队、设定方向和促进团队成长的能力，强调你如何激励他人并取得集体成就。
Last year, I was appointed to lead a cross-functional team of 8 people, 3 developers, 2 QA engineers, a product manager, a designer, and a data analyst to rebuild our customer-facing dashboard situation. As the technical lead, I needed to coordinate diverse skill sets, align competing priorities, and deliver a complete redesign within 4 months' task. I started by establishing a clear vision and breaking it down into achievable milestones with the team's input. I implemented a modified Agile framework with 2-week sprints and daily stand-ups, but adapted our processes based on team feedback. For example, when our QA engineers pointed out they were being engaged too late in the cycle, I adjusted our workflow to include them in planning sessions. I recognized different working and communication styles within the team and tailored my approach accordingly, providing detailed specifications for some team members, while focusing on the big picture for others. To foster ownership, I established expertise domains, where each team member became the go-to person for specific components. When we faced technical roadblocks, I facilitated problem-solving sessions rather than dictating solutions action. We delivered the project on schedule, with a 92% positive user feedback rating, significantly higher than our 65% target. Team survey results showed a 90% satisfaction rate with the project experience, and 3 team members were promoted following the project's success. The dashboard redesign increased customer engagement by 34% and reduced support tickets by 27%. Most importantly, the team requested to work together on future projects, and several practices we developed became standard across the engineering organization. Result: how do you influence people to get things done?
你如何影响他人完成事情？
How do you influence people to get things done?
你如何影响他人完成事情？展示说服力、关系建立和创造共同目标的能力，强调如何调整影响策略，以适应不同的利益相关者。
My approach to influence centers on 3 principles: building relationships before needing them, tailoring communication to different stakeholders, and finding mutual benefit. First, I invest time in understanding colleagues' priorities, working styles, and motivations through regular informal check-ins and active listening. This relationship foundation becomes crucial when collaboration is needed. Second, I adapt my communication approach based on the audience, using data and metrics when influencing analytical stakeholders, concrete examples for practical implementers, and vision impact narratives for big picture thinkers. For example, when advocating for adopting TypeScript across our codebase, I presented security metrics to our CISO, developer productivity data to engineering managers, and concrete bug examples to skeptical developers. Finally, I focus on finding alignment between what I need and what matters to others. When advocating for architectural changes that would initially slow development but improve maintainability, I acknowledged the short-term trade-offs while demonstrating how the changes supported the product team's long-term velocity goals. This comprehensive approach has allowed me to successfully champion initiatives like our API modernization effort and accessibility improvements without formal authority. I've found that lasting influence comes not from pushing my agenda but from genuine relationship building and understanding what motivates others. Give me an example of when you motivated others.
请举例说明你曾经如何激励他人。
Give me an example of when you motivated others.
请举例说明你曾经如何激励他人。展示团队激励和营造积极环境的能力，强调如何识别他人需求并提供适当支持和认可。
When our team inherited a legacy code base with over 60% technical debt and low test coverage, motivation was at an all-time low situation. As the tech lead, I needed to energize the team for a major refactoring effort while still delivering new features tasks. Rather than dictating a plan, I began by acknowledging the challenge and creating space for frustrations to be voiced. I then facilitated a workshop where the team collaboratively mapped the most problematic areas of the code base. Instead of an overwhelming complete rewrite, we identified strategic improvement zones where focused effort would yield the highest impact. To provide a sense of progress, I introduced a debt reduction dashboard that visualized our incremental improvements. Recognizing different motivational drivers, I paired engineers based on complementary interests. Some were excited by architectural improvements, others by performance optimization. I also instituted Innovation Fridays, where team members could experiment with potential solutions to our most pressing problems. When a junior developer implemented a particularly elegant testing approach, I ensured they presented it to leadership and recognized their contribution to action. Within 3 months, team engagement scores increased from 65% to 89%, and velocity improved by 35%, as the refactoring efforts began paying dividends. Test coverage improved from 23% to 68%, and critical customer-reported bugs decreased by 47%. Beyond the metrics, the team began voluntarily sharing knowledge about the code base, creating learning resources that became valuable for the broader organization. Several engineers who had been considering transfers requested to stay with the team, citing the renewed sense of purpose and technical growth result. Tell me about a time when you advocated for and pushed your own ideas forward despite opposition.
请描述一次你在面对反对时仍然倡导并推进自己想法的经历。
Tell me about a time when you advocated for and pushed your own ideas forward despite opposition.
请描述一次你在面对反对时仍然倡导并推进自己想法的经历。展示坚持原则和有效推动变革的能力，强调如何平衡坚定与开放，以及如何处理反对意见并达成共识。
A year ago, I identified that our monolithic architecture was causing significant scalability issues and proposed moving to a microservices approach, but faced strong resistance from both management and senior engineers. Situation: as a mid-level developer, I needed to convince the team to consider this architectural shift despite concerns about complexity and implementation cost tasks. Rather than pushing harder against opposition, I shifted my approach to better understand the underlying concerns. I scheduled one-on-one conversations with key stakeholders to hear their specific objections, which revealed that past microservices attempts had failed due to insufficient planning. Based on this feedback, I developed a detailed migration strategy that addressed specific pain points and included concrete ROI calculations. Instead of advocating for a complete overhaul, I proposed a targeted pilot approach, identifying 2 high-value, low-risk services that could be extracted first with minimal disruption. To address valid technical concerns, I created a proof-of-concept implementation on my own time that demonstrated how we could handle cross-service communication while maintaining consistency. I organized a technical brown bag session where I acknowledged past failures and presented how modern tooling and our improved engineering practices mitigated previous risks action. After 3 months of thoughtful advocacy, I secured support for the pilot project. The initial 2 microservices demonstrated a 60% improvement in deployment frequency and a 40% reduction in related production incidents. Based on this success, the team unanimously approved expanding the approach to other services. The CTO, who had been one of the strongest initial opponents, later credited the incremental approach and comprehensive planning for turning him into a supporter. Throughout this process, I learned that effective advocacy isn't about winning arguments, but about understanding concerns, adapting proposals to address valid objections, and demonstrating value through tangible results. Result: describe a time when you helped a team member learn a new skill or solve a problem.
描述一次你帮助团队成员学习新技能或解决问题的经历。
Describe a time when you helped a team member learn a new skill or solve a problem.
描述一次你帮助团队成员学习新技能或解决问题的经历。展示指导和知识分享能力，强调如何理解不同的学习风格，并提供有效支持，突出赋能他人，而非代替他人解决问题。
6 months ago, a junior developer on our team was struggling with asynchronous JavaScript concepts, which was blocking progress on a critical user authentication feature. Situation: as a senior front-end developer, I needed to help him understand these concepts while building his confidence, without simply taking over the task. I recognized that he was feeling overwhelmed, so I first normalized the learning curve by sharing my own past struggles with these concepts. Rather than providing abstract explanations, I suggested we pair program on a simplified version of the problem he was facing. I created a series of small, incremental challenges that isolated different aspects of asynchronous programming, starting with basic promises, before moving to async/await patterns and error handling. During our sessions, I emphasized asking questions, rather than giving answers, helping him reason through problems himself. When he encountered difficulty, I encouraged him to articulate his mental model, which revealed specific misconceptions I could address. Noticing he was a visual learner, I sketched diagrams of execution flows that he kept at his desk. I also curated specific resources matched to his learning style, and created opportunities for him to teach these concepts to others. Once he gained confidence action, within 3 weeks, he was independently implementing complex asynchronous workflows and successfully completed the authentication feature ahead of schedule. The code quality was excellent, requiring minimal changes during review. He later mentioned that this experience had transformed his understanding of JavaScript fundamentals and improved his debugging skills across all his work. 6 months later, he became the team's go-to person for helping others with asynchronous programming challenges, and has since mentored 2 new team members. This experience reinforced my belief that effective teaching requires adapting to individual learning styles and creating a safe environment for experimentation and questions. Result: tell me about a time you delegated a project effectively.
请描述一次你有效地委派项目的经历。
Tell me about a time you delegated a project effectively.
请描述一次你有效地委派项目的经历。展示任务分配和培养团队能力的能力，强调如何确定合适的人选，并提供适当的支持和自主权。
Last year, our team needed to redesign our notification system while I was leading 2 other critical initiatives. Situation: as the engineering manager, I needed to delegate this project effectively while ensuring its success, despite not being able to handle it personally. Task: I identified a mid-level developer who had expressed interest in push notification technologies, but hadn't yet had leadership opportunities. Instead of simply assigning the task, I first assessed her readiness by discussing the project scope and gauging her understanding of the technical challenges. I then explicitly defined what success looked like, including specific performance metrics, reliability requirements, and deadlines, while giving her autonomy on implementation approaches. We established a delegation framework with clear decision boundaries, areas where she had full autonomy, decisions that needed consultation, and non-negotiable requirements. I scheduled brief but regular check-ins that focused on removing obstacles rather than micromanaging, and created escalation paths for when she needed additional support. Recognizing this was a growth opportunity, I connected her with a senior architect in another team who had relevant expertise and could serve as a technical mentor action. The project was delivered on schedule with all requirements met, and user engagement with notifications increased by 26%. The developer demonstrated growth in both technical and leadership capabilities, successfully coordinating work across front-end and back-end teams. She later reported that the clarity of expectations combined with implementation freedom helped her excel, and she's since taken on larger leadership roles. This experience reinforced my approach to delegation as not just task distribution, but a development opportunity that requires the right balance of clarity, support, and autonomy. Result. Tell me about a time when you made an error in judgment.
请描述一次你在判断上犯错的经历。
Tell me about a time when you made an error in judgment.
请描述一次你在判断上犯错的经历。展示自我反思和从错误中学习的能力，强调如何识别错误、承担责任并采取纠正措施。
Last year, while leading the development of our payments integration system, I made a significant error in judgment by prioritizing feature development over documentation and knowledge sharing situation. As the technical lead, I was responsible for ensuring the system was both functional and maintainable by the broader team task. Focused on meeting an aggressive deadline, I decided to postpone creating technical documentation and conducting proper knowledge transfer sessions, believing we could address these non-critical items after launch. I personally implemented several complex components with minimal consultation, assuming this approach would be faster. When two key team members unexpectedly left the company shortly after launch, we faced a critical situation where I was the only person who fully understood crucial parts of the implementation. This created an immediate bottleneck for bug fixes and feature requests. During an urgent production issue, our response was delayed by hours because team members couldn't navigate the undocumented system architecture action. Recognizing my mistake, I took full responsibility in our retrospective meeting and developed a comprehensive remediation plan. I blocked 50% of my time for the next 3 weeks to create proper documentation, recorded technical walkthrough videos, and conducted hands-on knowledge transfer sessions with the entire team. I also worked with our engineering manager to establish new team standards that required documentation and knowledge sharing as part of our definition of done for all significant features. This experience fundamentally changed my leadership approach. I now view knowledge distribution as a critical success factor rather than an optional activity. In subsequent projects, our team has maintained a bus factor of at least 3 for all critical systems, and our incident response times have improved by 65%. Result. Describe a time when you had to make an unpopular decision.
描述一次你必须做出不受欢迎决定的经历。
Describe a time when you had to make an unpopular decision.
描述一次你必须做出不受欢迎决定的经历，展示做出艰难决策的勇气和原则，强调如何平衡不同利益相关者的需求，以及如何有效沟通决策理由。
8 months ago, I had to make the difficult decision to pause all new feature development for 6 weeks to address critical technical debt in our e-commerce platform situation. As the engineering director, I needed to prioritize long-term system health, despite intense pressure from product and sales teams, who had promised specific features to key customers' tasks. Before making the final decision, I gathered comprehensive data showing increased incident rates, declining developer productivity, and customer impact metrics. I met individually with key stakeholders to understand their specific business concerns and deadlines. After analyzing all perspectives, I concluded that continuing on our current path would likely result in a major system failure during the upcoming holiday season, our most critical business period. Rather than announcing the decision unilaterally, I presented the complete context to both engineering and product leadership, clearly outlining the risks of continuing versus the temporary pain of pausing feature work. I acknowledged the legitimate business impact and worked with product teams to identify creative interim solutions for the most critical customer commitments. To maintain transparency, I established weekly update meetings, where we demonstrated tangible improvements from our technical debt work action. The 6-week focus period resulted in a 75% reduction in critical incidents, a 40% improvement in deployment success rates, and a 30% increase in developer velocity once we resumed feature work. During the subsequent holiday period, our platform handled record transaction volumes with 0 major incidents. Several product leaders who initially opposed the decision later acknowledged it had been the right call, and we've since implemented a quarterly system health sprint as a preventative measure. This experience reinforced the importance of making principled decisions based on complete information, even when they're initially unpopular. It also taught me that transparent communication about the reasoning behind difficult decisions helps build trust even when people disagree with the outcome. Result. Tell me about a time when you gave someone feedback.
请描述一次你给予他人反馈的经历。
Tell me about a time when you gave someone feedback.
请描述一次你给予他人反馈的经历。展示提供建设性反馈的能力，强调如何以支持性方式传达信息，并确保其可操作性和有效性。
3 months ago, I noticed a talented engineer on my team was submitting code that met functional requirements, but consistently lacked proper error handling and edge case coverage. Situation. As his technical lead, I needed to address this pattern while maintaining his confidence and motivation task. Rather than immediately pointing out the deficiencies, I scheduled a private one-on-one meeting in a neutral setting. I started by acknowledging his strengths, particularly his ability to quickly implement complex features. I then framed the feedback around specific examples from recent pull requests, focusing on the impact rather than personal criticism. I noticed that in these 3 instances, the code doesn't account for network failures. This could affect user experience in unreliable network conditions. I asked questions to understand his perspective. What's your approach to handling error states? This revealed he was prioritizing speed and hadn't fully considered the reliability implications. Together, we reviewed examples of robust error handling from our codebase. I offered specific actionable suggestions and emphasized that this was an area many developers struggle with early in their careers. We agreed on a concrete improvement plan that included a checklist for his future submissions and my commitment to highlight good examples of error handling from across the team action. In the following weeks, his pull request showed remarkable improvement, with comprehensive error handling and edge case coverage. He proactively started discussions about potential failure modes during planning sessions, elevating the team's overall mindset about reliability. 6 weeks later, he implemented a particularly elegant error recovery mechanism that we adopted as a pattern across our services. During his next performance review, he specifically mentioned this feedback episode as a turning point in his approach to software reliability. This experience reinforced my belief that effective feedback is specific, impact-focused, and delivered with both empathy and clear expectations for improvement result.
请关注我们的频道，获取更多精彩内容。